Hi, Ernest. How are you?
Hello, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Doing fine indeed. Yes.
Well, I am super excited. So today, I wanted to introduce you to the group, and you are the author of the Shoemaker, the untold story of the British family firm that became a global brand, and also the founder of Reebok. So this is
Right.
Mr. Joe Foster. So I want to welcome you today and just thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ernest. It's a pleasure. It really is.
Indeed.
Yes.
So,
I'm glad to meet you.
are you in the late afternoon today, or what time is it where you're at?
I guess it's mid-afternoon. Time where we are now, it's nearly 3 o'clock.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
early.
So,
I'm actually in Mexico this morning, so we are running a couple hours early than the East Coast time. So
right. Okay.
fantastic. So I want to kind of get into a little bit. I know with having some short time, I just want to kind of touch base a little bit with you on getting the intro to you. So let's talk a quick minute and explain to us, the inspiration, the innovation, the vision of Reebok.
The vision of Reebok. Well, the family, of course, have been involved in sports goods since 1895.
Okay.
So I guess the inspiration comes from the fact that my grandfather invented the spike running shoe way back in 1895. And I think that Jeff and I, we started Reebok. I think we really expected and anticipated continuing the family business of J.W. Foster. But unfortunately, grandfather had two sons, my father and my uncle, and they didn't speak. They just fought with each other, a
Yeah.
bit like Eddie Dassler and Rudy Dassler. However, Rudy Dassler left and started Puma, but my father and uncle they just kept feuding. They
Okay.
just kept fighting. So the business was failing. My grandfather died in 1935. Sorry, in 1933, and I was born in 1935 on his birthday. So I came into this world with his name. I
Nice.
I became Joe as he was Joe. And when Jeff and I eventually became part of the family business, we could see it was failing badly. This was in 1958 when we left, and we could see the Foster family, they were still making the same product that they were making in the 1930s, and they were not moving forward. Adidas had moved in and had taken the soccer market, so they were losing a lot of market share, and my father wouldn't listen to our protests and saying that we need to change, we need to move forward, we need to expand. He just wouldn't listen, and so inevitably, Jeff and myself, we had to leave the family business and start up our own business, which was Mercury Sports Footwear, not Reebok. Started at Mercury. 18 months later, we changed it to Reebok, and it's been Reebok ever since.
Okay.
and, uh, and we got okay. So we were inspired, I guess, by my grandfather having started something and having world records in 1904. He had three world records in his shoes, and by 1908, he had gold medals from the London Olympics. So there was a good base, you might say, to start from, and a good inspiration. But that's what got us into Reebok, and then slowly it took off until eventually we got into America, where we just absolutely exploded.
Well, when was the transformation going into the U.S. market? That happened like in 19, like late 70s, 78, 79.
79, exactly, yes. I had been going to America uh, starting in 1968, and I had six failed attempts to get distribution going in America.
Okay.
Uh, in fact, with one distributor, I spent 4 years with one distributor trying to get into the market, but we couldn't. Fortunately, Runner's World, I don't know if you've heard of the magazine Runner's World. Runner's
Yeah.
World, they used to have a shoe edition, and that shoe edition, they used to check your shoes out and whatever. And we got three five-star shoes on the 1979 edition, and that was the difference. Now,
Okay.
now we had credibility. and people wanted Reebok shoes now. So that's when we came onto the market in 1979. And 3 years later, that's when we really found our white space, and that was aerobics.
Okay.
Yeah. When we got to aerobics, we were a $9 million company. Not a big company, but we were doing okay. A $9 million running company. 4 years later, we were $900 million. And we had grown a lot. So from 9 million to 900 million in 4 years. That was our real growth.
Certainly. And that predominantly happened in the US that way then? So what fraction of the sales were you still doing out of the UK and your international market?
Comparatively speaking, zero. I mean,
Okay.
when the explosion came because it was from Los Angeles that the aerobic scene started. And when Jane Fonda bought a pair of Reeboks and used them in her videos, her exercise videos,
Yeah.
it exploded in Southern California
Yeah.
fantastically. And because it exploded so fast, it really sucked all our attention. Our attention had to go on to satisfying that market. So whilst we were doing reasonable numbers in the UK and parts of the world, what sent us global was we pivoted from being a small running company to a very large women's company, and that was a big pivot for us. And we eventually, of course, got back into athletics and into other sports, but the big move was almost 0 to a billion with aerobics.
Yeah, but you end up grabbing most of the attention then with the women's aerobics.
Yes.
And really kind of fueled the future getting back into the sports section of it then.
That's right. Oh, yes. We could then get into American football, we could get to basketball. I think we made most impression in basketball, but we grew fairly rapidly to just under a $4 billion company before I stepped back in 1989.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to say I know it when I was looking at your timeline and then hearing you speak the other a couple weeks ago at the global net worth. So I kind of got fascinated into the backstory and started looking at the timeline of all, and so it's quite impressive, the growth that you've had in those years, and then even the trial and tribulations that you've had in those years, and then where you and your brother kind of started pivoting at and saw the opportunities for the white space, like you call it, was just amazing to have that vision. And that really kind of takes me into, the vision portion of, how you see or saw Reebok even in the early years projecting, now you're hitting this 900 million growth. Like, what was the next platform for you guys to jump to?
Well, the next platform for me was to back out,
Okay.
really, because by that time we'd become corporate, and my probably the skills that I had honed over the 20 years or more was the challenges, to handle the challenges. We began to look, we started off as Mercury. We had to change our name, and we found a better name. We found Reebok. We also had to change our silhouette. Our initial silhouette had 2 bars and a T-bar, 2 stripes and a T-bar. And Adidas didn't like that. Adidas thought that we were infringing the 3 stripes. So rather than take them on and say, no, we're totally different, rather than take them on, we decided that maybe this is an opportunity to change our silhouette. So we changed to the Vector, which again was a better silhouette. So we got used to the idea that we will get problems. We'll have a lot of problems. But why don't we use those problems to find an advantage, to change to something? And I guess that once we got to $1 billion, it was really, we had a lot of designers, we had a lot of accountants, we had a lot of lawyers and a lot of
Sure.
people in between, and I was just touring the world, waving the flag, being an ambassador. And by that time, I had put on about 30 different countries on the global to get us global. So
Yeah.
and now what am I doing? I'm at 35,000 feet for probably the
Oh,
best part of every week, and I'm arriving at our latest or one of our distributors, and I'm picked up at the airport in a limousine, and we go down to the best hotel, and then we're eating at the best restaurants, and we're just talking few things, but we're not doing anything to do with challenging. So I thought the best thing for me now, take a rest. So I stepped back from full-time activity and took a rest. And at that time, 1990, we didn't have computers. We didn't have cell phones.
yeah.
So it was totally different. And of course, now kids are brought up with computers. Kids are brought up with
It's
technology. And I mean, the technology of my day was probably, could you make a better design? But and was there a change in how footwear is made? But really, footwear is very labor intensive and still is.
mhm.
We've yet to get over that. Maybe AI is going to show us something here. So yeah, who knows? But it was good for me to step back, and then I could watch a bit more of what was going on, because we had a brilliant team, a
Yeah.
lot of a lot of brilliant people. Paul,
What year was it that you ended up stepping back from Reebok then?
what year did I step back? I
Mhm.
stepped back at the end of 1989. So really, almost January 1990 was the first time that I didn't go to work.
So after you guys, because I know when in 1979, I think is when you're breaking into the U.S. market, is when you met Fireman, right?
Yeah, Paul Fireman, yes.
Yeah. And then he essentially ended up helping or catapulted the U.S. market for you guys. Is that accurate?
Well, yes. As far as I was concerned with the US market, and this applied to any market that I went to globally, that we needed a person, an American, to run the American market. We needed that. In other words, we needed somebody local. For me to go over to America to learn too much about the culture, to learn too much about the
Too
way
much.
things work, that's not what was wanted. What we wanted was to have Paul. He needed to be in charge. He was CEO, and he needed to make decisions. And we moved an awful lot of things over to America, because just as we got into America, my brother died. It was very unfortunate, but he got cancer and he died. So I had a lot of decisions to make just as we got into America. Seeing that the American market was starting to grow really well, we were really scaling the business there. The best thing was to move a lot of things over there. And design, we moved design over to America because that's where we would make most impression, where we could have better results. So we moved design over there,
Yeah.
and from design, it was then we moved the production out of USA, so that we didn't have to go around in circles, come into the UK, go into by that time it was South Korea.
Yeah.
So South Korea, it was better if we had that direct connection from the USA. What did they want? Get the designs right, go straight to South Korea and have the production. We had all the rest of the world coming through the UK. So we had an office in the UK, an international office in the UK that handled global. But I didn't want America to have the distraction of global. I wanted America to just think American,
Yeah.
think America, because that was growing so rapidly and so good that I knew that the job of global would be easy, because everybody used to look to America. What's happening in America? And if they like what was happening in America, it would be easy to take it global. So that decision wasn't a hard decision. It was pretty obvious. Let's do the thing. Let's really run it from America.
Yeah. Well, that's well, I was going to say, talking about a little bit about the marketing side, and it's really, and you kind of touched base on it. It was more of how you really infiltrated the U.S. market is really kind of where that question was leading into. So I appreciate that. So talking about sports, obviously, you got into the aerobics side, and that was your big catapult here into the U.S. market. So then eventually that kind of reopened the doors again back into the sports sides with the other sports teams and whatnot, correct?
Yes.
So you found like with the so sports, breeds competition. So the competition now you're bringing to those of the Adidas and the Nike and trying to topple that top one. So what was kind of the biggest catapult for that for you guys to get to that number one position in that time?
Well, I guess that the drive that aerobics gave us was so incredible, and it gave us a tremendous cash flow, and we scaled so big that we then had the finance to go into, I think, basketball, tennis, and then it was American football. We had a dilemma. We were growing so fast, and we were growing as a woman's company, and we'd sit down around the table and say, are we a women's company? Are we a sports company? What are we? And I think this decision was, well, we're a sports-driven company, and we've not got to let aerobics become our only business. We have to start to think, what's next? Because we must grow beyond aerobics. The brand eventually, after a number of years, 2005, became part of Adidas, and Adidas actually took Reebok out of team sports. But before then, of course, after our aerobics, we'd gone into team sports, and we overtook Adidas, we overtook Nike, and we did become number one. So, and that was late 80s, early 90s, we were number one. And that's just when I stepped back at that point, just into the 90s, I stepped back. So it's hard to say, because now the business started to plateau, and it hit that point where we were not really scaling anymore. And that's when Paul Feynman said he wanted out as well. and the company got sold to Adidas. Fortunately now, 2 years ago, ABG took on the brand, because from a $4 billion business, the revenues had dropped to 1 billion with Adidas. It dropped to 1 billion with Adidas. But ABG, well, Shaq is 15% of ABG, and Shaq, of course, was one of our main influencers, and he loved Reebok. He still loves Reebok, and now, of course, now it's with ABG. But Shaq is in there, all 7'2" of him. He's in there, and he's now president of basketball. And we're going back into basketball with Allen Iverson and Dee Brown. And so I think we're going to see an awful lot of Reebok in team sports as we grow into the future. And now we've got the visibility back now with ABG, and the global visibility. I think ABG have about 370,000 global outlets. So that's quite a sizable retail that we've gone into now. So so things are going nicely for Reebok.
Yeah, because now they're stepping into the apparel side and all the different clothing lines and the moisture wicking materials, and kind of like, the way that the new trends are happening and stuff. So definitely, for sure. So in the I want to kind of dive into the infrastructure of your business.